tension across the valley ever since the news of the murder so many years ago. She was living in a home in South Scottsdale. She was a graduate of the University of Arizona. Family and friends were shocked when she was found dead, as I say, 10 years ago. February 18th of 2015. Here we are now 10 years later, and this case is getting underway in court. So good morning, everybody. I'm Ron Hoon. This is Fox 10 Talks. We've got an hour of information for you right now, and we do want to dig into this case because Benjamin Taylor, high-profile attorney here in town, who's also been an analyst for us in other cases that we've taken a good hard look at, particularly over the course of the last year or so with the Lori Daybell case. He joins this morning. Benjamin, thank you for coming in.
Well, thanks, Ron, for having me.
Okay, let's talk first. Let's give us a little bit of background. For those of us who were here 10 years ago, especially in the news business, it was such a high-profile case. But for somebody who's moved here in the last few years, what do we know about the origins of the case and how it's sort of unfolded and dragged on since then?
Yes, I mean, when you have a cold case that has happened back in 2015 and they don't really have a suspect, you don't really have, the prosecution can't charge anybody. They can't move forward with a case. You need a person to prosecute. And because there wasn't really any hardcore evidence to point to a certain person, it's been cold for over 10 years. And now, what's the new elements of this is the DNA. They've matched DNA, or allegedly matched DNA to this Ian Mitchum guy.
And that's who we're showing on the screen.
Yes. So
right
now
here.
that...
And even this goes back quite a ways.
Yeah, this goes back quite a ways because he had a DUI conviction back in Scottsdale. So they pretty much used that DNA that they had already in the crime lab to match it at the house of where the alleged murder happened. And that's how the police and prosecution now believes that this is the man who killed Allison.
So we all watch CSI and some of these other shows. What was the big deal about, why was it controversial and needed apparently years worth of legal back and forth to even decide if they could move forward with the case?
Because Ian Mitchell's defense attorney objected to the DNA evidence coming in because saying it's so old, how do we know that this is reliable evidence? And one major thing, they're saying that the police and the prosecution obtained the DNA illegally, meaning without a search warrant. And most of the times you need a search warrant to get your evidence, to get DNA evidence from a person. So because there wasn't a search warrant here in this case, the defense has fought this. And sometimes legal cases take many years, like you mentioned, Ron.
Right.
They watch, people watch a show in 1 hour and think that a case ends. In real life...
It's a good, and that's how we like these cases solved. But in real life, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, in real life, Ron, these cases last years and years. As you see, this is lasts over 10 years now, going on 10 years.
Yeah.
So
why didn't they get a warrant?
A lot of times, sometimes police, feel like they don't need a warrant. Sometimes they believe that, okay, we already have the evidence here from his previous conviction, and that we don't need a warrant.
On the DUI.
On the DUI,
yeah,
correct. But a lot of times, I always say, I think even the prosecutions would agree too, a warrant would be the safest way because you never want a case kicked out of court. At least the prosecution doesn't. Of course, as a defense attorney, you want a case to get kicked out of court because if the case gets kicked out of court, you win the case.
Yes. What would you say? You've been analyzing it here, and it's really just now getting underway. What is the strongest point for the prosecution, and what is the strongest point for the defense?
Of course, now with DNA evidence, jurors, when I do trials, jurors love DNA. I mean, like you said, they watch a lot of TV. They see scientific evidence, and when they hear DNA, a lot of times when the expert goes on the stand and talks about DNA, they love to hear about that. But the defense attorney will now have to have their own expert to come on stage and come on the stand and testify, to this DNA to say, hey, this DNA isn't reliable. This DNA shouldn't have been, used correctly, and maybe this is not Ian Mitchum's real DNA. Maybe it's been some DNA that's been inconclusive. So it's going to be interesting to see how the defense attorney attacks this evidence now that the prosecution is going to be able to use this evidence.
And if you were the defense attorney in this case, would you advise your client to get on the stand or no?
A lot depends on what goes on during the case. I mean, one of the things about criminal defense is you never really want your client to take the stand because it's always the prosecution's burden of proof, meaning the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt whether or not your client is guilty here. So there's no reason for him. He doesn't have to prove his innocence. It's up to the prosecution to prove his guilt. So a lot of times during trial, if you're winning the trial and you feel like you have a good chance to win, there's no reason for your client to take the stand. However, if you feel like your client needs to take the stand and explain to the jury, where was I that day? Because the jury's going to be wondering whether if your DNA matches there, you must have been there. So if Ian Mitchum has an alibi to say I was not even in the city, I was in a different state, that could be a big defense there. There's this proof that he wasn't even at the location of the murder.
We're on YouTube, so people are able to chat with us from all over the world. Tank Arkian says, was it random, or did she know him, or he know her? As you've looked at the case, is there any real tie between the two of them other than on that night of the murder, if he were to be found guilty?
Yeah, I think more facts are going to come out during trial, and that's what the prosecution and the defense are going to be bringing out. Was there any sort of relationship beforehand? Were there any conversations, text messages, phone calls? But right now, it's kind of hard to say if there was any evidence they knew each other beforehand, or this is just a random alleged random murder here. So right. I guess once the evidence comes out during the trial, we will find out more.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
By the way, nice to see you.
To
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, anytime.
What do you think this tells us about maybe how we look at other cases involving DNA and whether or not this kind of opens the box? Obviously, we've seen DNA being used in a lot of other cases, but a lot of people who've been here a long time remember this case. It's been a long time.
Yes, it's been a long time, and now this opens the door, and the Arizona Supreme Court has pretty much said, if you committed a crime, I don't care if it's 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and your DNA is still out there, this what says is that your DNA might be used in a future crime or a future court case if you committed a crime years ago. So the defense tried to preclude it, meaning not have the evidence come in to trial. But now this shows you that this evidence was coming in.
Wow. Okay. Really good perspective from you. We don't have any idea at this point how long this case is going to last, but we're going to be down there. We're going to continue to follow it. And like you said, Syleste, 10 years. People still it was so shocking in that quiet South Scottsdale neighborhood.
It really
People
was.
still remember it. So, Benjamin, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And
Thank
your
you.
perspective.
Yeah.
Hey, another story we're following this morning. Have you heard about this high-profile, ultra-luxury car theft ring that some arrests? They've been tracking them for a long time, and now finally they're announcing some arrests.
So about 8 months ago, we received information on a Cadillac Escalade that we believed had the VIN number switched. So it's a stolen vehicle with a legitimate VIN on it. As our officers identified that car and who it was registered to, we started digging a little bit further into that company and found out that there were approximately 35 other vehicles that we believed were VIN switched as well and registered and being rented out on Turo, the peer-to-peer car sharing platform. On Tuesday, we executed several search warrants on several different properties and locations, and we were able to recover 29 of the cars so far.
How?
I can't 100% say it's cartel. However, we did have an individual from Mexico coming up to the vehicles who would work on the vehicles. We believe that they were switching the VINs on the vehicle, and then he would return that back down to Mexico. So some of the Turo money or money was being sent to the Middle East. So I don't know where the rest of it went, but some of it was being sent to the Middle East. So there are ties to the Middle East as well. Ali, our main suspect, he is the business owner. He is the one that is actually running the platform, the rental cars on Turo, and he's the one that's actually physically conducting the business. Dahlia, she's involved with the business as well, and she also has a profile on Turo renting out the cars, and she assists with running that business. The other gentleman, was He's a third-party MVD agent. So he was assisting in the registering and titling of the vehicles that were brought over.
Okay, so as the case has unfolded, talk about some great detective work, but I think it's the first time we've heard about any kind of a ring, whether it's a drug ring or in this case a high-profile luxury auto theft ring with ties to Dubai.
Yeah, crazy.
And so we'll just keep following it for you here, but just the fact that it was as sophisticated as it was and involved the theft of over 2 million vehicles, and then just brazenly putting them on one of these, rental apps where people rent out their cars that actually belong to them.
Well,
Turo.
this is crazy. I think this is the most wild because when I rent a car, I'm renting a Camry. I mean, these are like the fanciest cars out there.
Right.
And there's a video of a Rolls Royce. Like, imagine the cost of that, right? One of the Brandy, the bookworm in the chat says, looks like they stole the cars that had tracking systems. Wonder if that is how they were able to, track them down. Did they have to disable that tracking system?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But that Turo, it's quite popular with a lot of people.
I keep hearing more and more people. We had some relatives come into town recently, and they're like, no, we're not doing Hertz. We're not even doing Avis or Budget or Enterprise. We're doing Turo.
Did they rent that Rolls Royce that we saw in that video? Lucky them.
Yeah, really interesting. But wow, man, talk about some good detective work, but in a dangerous, I think, situation when you have ties to Mexico and Dubai and LA and here, and you're trying to piece it all together. So great job there.
Yeah, great job.
Okay, before we go to break, we got a great poll question for you, and we want to know what you think here. We're asking you to predict, will a judge try to stop President Trump from military action in Iran? 24% say yes, and I hope it works. 5% are saying, of course a judge will try. Now Trump can't even serve as commander-in-chief. And 71% say no, because overruling a president, even judges would think about this, overruling a president on military matters goes too far. So if you grab that QR code right there, it'll be a chance for you to let us know what you think. Now, as we come to break, Syleste, here's a nice early view of the mystery cam. Look at that pleasant scene.
Wow, look at those trees. Is this, what type of, is it a
welcome you back right now. We've been having some excellent guesses on our mystery cam, Syleste. Now, what is that that's kind of in the front of the picture?
That's what I was wondering.
Are those like seats and then a picnic table?
Oh,
I guess so.
they do look like Adirondack chairs or something.
Oh, are we in the Adirondacks? That's a good question, right?
Oh, maybe. That would be New York.
Okay, what are you seeing for some guesses?
So we've got Missouri from Troy S., Montana from Tank.
Yeah.
Tank, are you new?
I think Tank is.
I like your name,
He
Tank.
had questions for our guest in the last segment, too.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Nicholas Poncho says West Virginia. B. Miguel is going with Virginia, as well as Louis Gonzalez. And Linda Montert says North Carolina. I'm waiting to see if Sherry Nevada pops up because she's been right many, many times.
I'm afraid she intimidates some of our other guessers.
Well, I'm intimidated. That's why I'm waiting for her. I'm going to go with New York, though, with the Adirondacks.
Okay, and I think I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go somewhere in Virginia.
Virginia.
All right, here
you're
she
going
is,
with
Syleste.
Louis?
Yeah.
Nick, West Virginia, B. Miguel.
Yeah.
Y'all are right.
Really?
Yep.
What do you got?
Mount Weather.
Really?
Mount Weather, Virginia.
That sounds like a pretty generic name of a mountain. What are we going to call that mountain up there? The weather?
I mean, it looks good. The weather's good. Mount Weather.
Yeah, for sure.
Well done, Kelly Laws. He's in for Dino.
I haven't checked, but I'm betting it's not 117 there today. We did hit 117 yesterday.
What were you doing when you felt the air, the temp the hottest? Do you remember yesterday?
Probably walking in and out of the gym.
Oh.
Yeah.
In a tank top? Were you wearing a tank top?
Syleste, that's personal information that I don't choose to share. Okay.
Well, maybe you should post a photo on Instagram, and I wouldn't have to ask.
Anybody walking across a big parking lot, which I don't know, I always go around 4 o'clock, and it's the busiest time of the day. You got to park 50 spaces away, and you're like, oh, this is a slog.
I was putting gas in. What time was it? It might have even been like 6 p.m.
Oh,
and the wind, the breeze. We have strong breezes. If you're here in Arizona, we're expecting some breezy conditions along with warming temps, but it feels like just a hot blow dryer.
110 today is going to be way better than 117,
Absolutely.
And then by I think Monday we're saying 102.
Yeah, might venture outside today.
15 degrees cooler
It's crazy.
by Monday. Like this nutty weather. The interesting thing is our George Obie has been going through the files, Syleste.
Oh.
And he is starting to find these stories that we did 30, 40, 45 years ago. Here is a story from 1980 on a very hot day here in the Valley, juxtaposed with what people were saying yesterday. And I think you are going to find this fascinating. Listen to these sounds.
Oh, I'd say probably the City of Phoenix workers working on the streets.
Yeah, the people working the roads, like on the highways, all
That's
that.
that's today.
I would think the construction workers.
I got a friend, actually, he works in construction.
Construction workers.
Probably anybody that has to be like construction out on the roads, especially with like the asphalt and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Look at the officers 45 years ago.
Oh, they're handing out something there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Some kind of cool treats. Oh, yeah, at one of the food trucks. And here's a more modern food truck. Anyway.
What a great, who put this together? Jeff
George Obie.
Yeah. Such a great job, George.
Yeah, no
well
kidding.
done.
All right. Well, we are going to, it's just some perspective, especially if this is your first summer here. I always feel bad for the people who are like, 117, it's never been so. Actually, it's this bad every year.
It really is.
Right?
It really. I mean, Ashley, one of our meteorologists here, she worked the morning show this morning with us. This is her first summer here.
Yeah.
And she's actually looking forward to it. She's like, I'm ready for the heat. I love it here already. And so, welcome, Ashley, and good luck to all you newbies.
Hey, in about 90 seconds, we've got a treat for you. We have a aviation expert who's going to be joining us from Ohio State University, the Ohio State University. But just one other quick topic before we get to that, because a new ranking is out, Syleste, of the safest and the riskiest cities in America in which to drive.
Okay.
And it looks like this. Ready? On the left, those are the 5 safest cities, lowest accident rates. This is straight from Allstate. They went out and they analyzed claims how many times people are filing claims because there was some sort of a crash.
Okay.
Brownsville, Texas, Boise, Idaho, Fort
That's pretty.
Collins, Colorado, Cary, North Carolina, or Laredo, Texas. Those you got your best chance on any given day is in those 5 cities.
And to survive on the roadways.
Well, just to even avoid a fender bender.
Yeah, for
On
sure.
the other hand, Boston, Washington, Baltimore, Worcester, and Springfield, Mass. I'm just wondering, why are 2 of them in that Baltimore, Washington area? Why are 2 others in Massachusetts?
Well, and Brownsville, that's down in that little tippy top bottom of Texas.
Yes, that's right, all the way down like below Corpus Christi.
Yeah, we have anytime we're covering a big immigration story, that's a lot of times where the national correspondents head to is Brownsville, Texas.
Yep. So in terms of here in the Valley, what would you do you know this story already, Celeste? What would you say was the #1 safest city in the Valley for driving?
I do know the answer to this one.
Oh, well then.
Well, I think.
Okay, go.
Scottsdale.
That is correct. But I've been trying to figure out why. I don't feel like Scottsdale has the best roads.
No. I wonder
mean,
if it's because they also have a couple of trolley systems.
Okay.
Maybe it's not as big as Phoenix or Mesa.
True.
So you have less roads for crashes
and
to take
maybe
place.
there's like more cul-de-sacs and
and more high rises.
Yeah, maybe so.
But
anyway, congrats, Scottsdale. Next would be Gilbert. This is great. All 3 of these cities are in the top 30 in America. Gilbert at 21, Chandler at 26. And there toward the very bottom of the list is Phoenix, our beloved city, at 115.
Listen to Brandy the Bookworm. She says, I moved from Albuquerque, where 27 years she lived there. It hit maybe 103 a couple of times, and the city basically shut down at 103.
Yep.
She says, I moved here the weekend we hit 122 and my AC died. God bless you, Brandy. You survived.
And she stuck with us all these
I
years
know.
later.
She's
That was
still
back
here.
in the 90s. So thank you, Brandy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to bring in a guest that I've sure been looking forward to. There he is on camera. That is Professor David Woods. He's in systems engineering at Ohio State University. And Professor, understand you just received a Lifetime Achievement Award in Aviation, Space, and Safety. So congrats on that. And I guess we're just passing along to our audience your bona fides here. You have been, I think, interested in several developments. There have been a lot of big headlines over the course of just this past few months.
Right.
Everything from the latest warning on the 737 MAX, but I think maybe even more importantly, this Air India crash.
Mm-hmm.
So Celeste and I thought if we could bring you on, because we've had a couple of other experts as well, but we really wanted to get your perspective now that it's been over a week and you've had a chance to actually look at some of this video. What are your thoughts right now in terms of what might have been behind it?
Well, we're still a little early as they analyze the black boxes, but you can see from the initial footage, this happens very quickly. It's only 30 seconds. So for the general public, there's a lot of details people will talk about, but think about 2 simple things, right? You have to have, on a takeoff, you need power and you need the aircraft configured for lift. And in this case, clearly they did not have enough lift. Now, did that come because of an engine problem and power was short? And when they went for more power, they couldn't get it? Or is it because something happened that led the airplane to be misconfigured? Now, your listeners will always say, it's about the pilots. And we always remind people it's about the automation. These are very highly automated aircraft. And so one of the studies we just finished in aviation safety was not analyzing how the pilots acted during a critical crisis in the cockpit, but rather how did the automation behave? Because the automation isn't a single system. It's many systems that have to work together. So there's a couple possibilities here. Typically, an accident like this doesn't happen because of one thing. It happens because of the interplay of a couple things. Clearly, these people had very little time to react. And the things they went to recover, gain lift, get power, didn't work. And so it highlights an issue about aviation in particular and other areas, that things can go badly quickly. And that's a highlight that we had Wednesday night with the SpaceX explosion.
Oh, that was dramatic.
So true. Yeah.
SpaceX has had a long series of explosions and failures on launches. Now, it's destroyed things. It's destroyed launch pads. It's destroyed some natural areas in southern Texas. It has created debris fields in the sky that required air traffic controllers to move commercial airplanes out of the way. But nobody heard about that because the air traffic controllers reacted quickly to do the right thing in a surprise situation. So it's an interesting contrast. But remember, too, each of those losses of on a SpaceX mission test, the head of SpaceX says, well, we're learning. But we've known a lot about the risks of rocket launches for a long time.
Well, but speaking about learning, that's one of the
$80 million a launch.
Yeah.
$80 million a launch is his price of him learning.
Okay.
Wow.
So speaking about learning, I thought we've learned almost everything we needed to learn about the Dreamliner. It's been flying for 15 years. So just getting back to that case, doesn't that kind of burnish the credentials of the aircraft itself vis-a-vis something that might have some sort of a mistake? I mean, what are the and I'm sorry, but we only have a couple of minutes left. What are the primary things that you're going to focus in on regarding what the pilots did and also regarding the fuel? Because I understand there are some questions about the fuel.
So the issue is why they lost power or couldn't get power. And that this all implicates that there were some onboard failures. It wasn't simply something the pilots did. Now, the pilots may not have reacted in the best way once we analyze it. But if this is a problem with the Dreamliner, remember less than 2 years ago, we had Senate hearings from quality inspectors and managers who were whistleblowers saying that there were manufacturing defects and that they were violating standards in the development, the manufacturing of Dreamliners. So if there is identification in the next few weeks that this has aircraft signature failure in this accident, this is going to be a huge impact on Boeing, because Boeing's record with the plug door accident on Alaska Airlines, and the 737 MAX accidents.
Professor, I'm going to ask you to hold with us just through the commercial break, if you can, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. This is the streaming show that we call Fox 10 Talks. Folks watching from on YouTube from all around the world. And then locally, you can catch us on Channel 45, which is Fox 10 Extra. Celeste, let's continue our conversation with Professor David Woods.
Let's do it. Professor Woods, thank you for hanging with us throughout that commercial break. We so appreciate it. You have been a wealth of knowledge on this case. A quick question for you. One of the concerns with that plane going down was the possibility of fuel contamination. We don't know much else, what that could mean or what else that means, but what are your thoughts on that issue?
This is where the investigators are very thorough. And that's why we're often having to say, let's wait a little while after the accident when we want answers quickly, because it takes time to check out many of these things. And sometimes we have surprises. And that's happened to me when we've been involved in investigations before. And we thought it was one thing, and all of a sudden a fact came out a little bit later that really changed the interpretation. However, let me say this. Americans tend to think of other parts of the world as having lesser standards relative to airports and technology and navigation aids. All right, and that's not really the case. Think about what's going on at Newark Airport in the news right now. I was just talking to a veteran captain who's one of the big advocates of aviation safety, going to retire after 30 years. And right before this accident, and he said, commenting on how our lack of investment in infrastructure in aviation and airports has degraded things. And he goes, that doesn't happen when I fly into, I just came from Bangalore, a different city, a different airport in India. And he goes, everything there is first rate. I don't make an approach to land or take off there like I have to do it here in the US because the equipment doesn't work so well. The equipment isn't reliable. It's time for us to start reinvesting in our aviation infrastructure and catch back up to the rest of the world and get ahead again. That's where we used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we sure hope that's where it's headed, but it's like trying to turn a gigantic ship around is going to take a long time.
It is.
Professor, you are, as we anticipated, a wealth of information. Highly respected there at Ohio State. Hopefully we can call on you again sometime.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope it isn't after an accident next time.
Okay. Yeah. We'll look for the good news stories in aviation as well. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
So, Celeste, would it ever be a dream for you as a shopper to say, what's your favorite? Would you say like Costco is your favorite store to go shopping?
I would have to say a regular grocery store because I love perusing through the produce, meats, and kind of making my way around.
Would you love a scenario where, say, you pulled into your favorite Bashas'?
Okay.
And you're like, whoa, man, that one is way too busy. I'll just go to the other Bashas' right across the street.
I would definitely do that. Well, you know what it is? The lines to check out.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. That'll hold you up.
Maybe not at Bashas', but at a couple of these other stores, they have like 42 spaces for you to check out.
Right.
And 2 lonely checkers. I'm like, I don't like that balance at all. But anyway, it sounds crazy what we're talking about here, but a grocery store just went in across the street from a Trader Joe's.
This is crazy.
Not a Walmart, not a Kroger, not a Safeway. Another Trader Joe's. Literally right across the street from the first one. Check this out.
Want to know something actually insane? I just went to the new Trader Joe's that opened in Sherman Oaks. This is the other Trader Joe's. Literally across the street. Still open. And I just asked the worker, I'm like, how long is the other Trader Joe's going to stay open? And she said, they just signed their lease. They just re-signed their lease. So at least 3 years. Like, what? This one's way nicer. And then we've got one literally right there. Make it make sense.
Oh my goodness, so
She's
crazy.
Right. Make it make sense.
Make sense.
Why wouldn't they close down the little one, the old one, and just keep the new one open?
I know.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what other store I would love to have.
Across the street from one another?
Now, is this asking too much? Have one Dairy Queen?
Oh,
And
one.
What are you
And-
laughing about over there, Dave? Hold on
One-
here. Where's the Dave count? What are you laughing about, buddy?
Big D.
Sometimes I pulled in that drive-through and I'm just aching for a dipped cone.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be like a 10-minute wait. What
Derek,
if they put in a second one?
You know, that's actually a great point.
Thank you.
The Dequa on Central and Camelback. you go
needs
there.
Competition.
You go there on a Friday night about 8 p.m. I'm telling you, you're waiting 30 minutes.
Oh, no.
30 minutes
Okay.
in line. And then the line if you were to park and get out and walk in, because, you know, I'm like, I'm not waiting in this line.
Right.
You're waiting 30 minutes.
That's
like it's a long line
Okay.
out the door.
Let's have a second DQ right there.
By the way, Ron, real quick, Lisa Dinsmore, Fred Meyer's in Oregon, or a Buy Mart is her favorite grocery.
Okay.
Fry's and Trader Joe's on Williamsfield and Gilbert for
Yes.
Troy S.
Yeah.
Sprouts, Trader Joe's, and a couple of others in here too.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are their
Good.
favorites.
We are getting a new Sprouts out there in East Mason. I just couldn't be more excited about it. I
Oh, my
love Sprouts. And by the way, that's a local success story. They're building stores more and more all across the USA, and they started right here in the Valley.
They just don't have everything you need.
Okay.
So I go there for like certain items.
Yeah.
You know, and then
Right,
Walmart,
true,
Fry's,
true.
whatever.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is really interesting. A study came out today regarding how much drinking you do and your risk of the most feared of all cancers, which is pancreatic cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Researchers say that women who had 1 or 2 drinks per day had a slightly higher risk of developing pancreatic cancer. Now, I don't know if pancreatic cancer happens more in men or in women, but in this case, they studied women, and it was between 10 and 15% higher if you had a couple of alcoholic drinks per day,
Okay.
12% exactly, while men who had 2 to 4 drinks per day had a 15% increased risk of pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
Would you agree it's the most feared of all the cancers?
I think so. I mean, you don't think about a lot of those organs that are deep way inside your abdomen, you know,
Right,
and you
right.
desperately need all of them for sure.
Yes, you sure do.
Johns Hopkins Medicine, Ron, I just looked this up. Pancreatic cancer is slightly more common in men than in women.
Okay.
Overall incidence higher in men. Important to note that pancreatic cancer rates are rising faster in younger women, particularly among Black women, than in men of the same age.
Something to keep your eye on, that's for sure.
Yes.
But at least they've established a link because people want to know what is causing all these pancreatic cancer
Yes.
cases. All right, time to shift to politics. Shannon Bream is going to answer the question. You're going to hear it right now and a couple of others as well. Is it possible that a federal judge might try to stop in and prevent the president from exercising any authority he has as commander-in-chief and stop any type of military action inside Iran? It was all part of my interview with Shannon from earlier today. So, Shannon, here we are now in this waiting period, 2-week delay before the president decides what to do. I'm sure you're hearing some talk in Washington. What's really behind this pause?
I think a part of it is this big debate about whether the U.S. wants to actually get militarily involved in what's going on in Iran. And that is a big question. We're going to talk about it on the show Sunday. Senator Tim Kaine is one of our guests. He's a Democrat out of Virginia who's really pushing this resolution to make sure that the White House comes to Congress before it would do something that would get us that directly involved. So the president has said all along, we'd rather settle this diplomatically. We know that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is still in talks with Iran's foreign minister, so they seem like they haven't completely given up on that path just yet.
The thing is, the Iranians claim they can now build a nuclear bomb in a short period of time. I mean, within a matter of weeks. Who knows? Maybe that's a lie. But it could give them time to mine the Strait of Hormuz and put a sudden shock in the world's oil supplies. So with all of these kind of things, I'm sure, rolling around the National Security Council and in the president's decision-making process, how widespread is the concern in the intelligence world, or even up on Capitol Hill, that if he does decide to go, that it cannot be contained to just a few bunker buster runs?
Yeah, that is a real concern because this is a president who was very clear, he has been for years, that he wanted to not only pull us out of foreign entanglements, but not start any new ones. He's also, though, had this bright line that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if he's convinced, and there has been some disagreement within the intel community about how close they are to that bomb and that weaponization, then he may feel like this is the time to act. So I think that he's giving the world the message, we are doing everything we can to pursue a diplomatic solution. But remember, he says within 2 weeks, there will be a response or a decision That can mean today. It can mean tomorrow. It could mean 2 weeks from now. But I think that he's also expressed a lot of skepticism that the Iranians may be stringing us along and potentially using these delays for some of the things you mentioned.
Shannon, we've seen time and time again people opposed to almost everything the president decides to do going into court. Could you possibly see a scenario, particularly with this growing movement on Capitol Hill, to stop him and say, no, you have to come to Congress? Could you see someone trying to go to a federal judge if he were to decide to go and try to stop the president from doing so?
Yeah, it's happened before. And I remember covering some of these filings by members of Congress and by the way, to be fair, I think back on someone like Congressman Dennis Kucinich. He tried against both Democrat and Republican presidents to get things stopped and shut down. So he has opposed where he thought that presidents from either party were getting this wrong and going around Congress. And there's been this ongoing debate. Has Congress ceded too much of its power to the presidents, to the executive branch, and in this case, President Trump? So I wouldn't be surprised because, as you said, everything ends up in court these days. We're awaiting Supreme Court opinions at 10 a.m. Eastern. And we're still awaiting that decision on nationwide injunctions and whether a single federal district judge, some 700 of them, can shut down a policy nationwide.
Last question, 4th of July deadline coming up. And I know in the Senate they think they're a bigger deal than the House. And that their opinion should carry more weight. Here's just one, for example. Senators now want to dial back the deduction for state taxes, but there are some House members from New York, which gave the GOP their narrow majority. They are saying that is a deal killer when it comes back to the House. Are there some other things you're watching that potentially could blow the whole deal?
I mean, that's huge. The idea of Medicaid cuts, the idea of overall spending cuts. I mean, there are still a lot of things that are not ironed out in the Senate. And as you said, they had just a whisker-thin majority to get it over the finish line in the House. So Speaker Johnson is watching this very closely with a lot of concern about what's going on in the Senate. As for that SALT deduction, these House members who said it's got to stay at $40,000, the Senate is now debating or having some conversations about, okay, do you keep it at $40,000, but it's not available to everyone? Like highest earners would not get that. It would benefit more middle and low income earners. So we'll see if they can get to a deal.
Okay. And there's our visit with Shannon. You have a few seconds left to vote in our poll. Grab that QR code. Will a judge, what's your prediction, step in and try to stop the president? 22% say yes, hope it works. 67% say no, that goes too far in overruling a president. Grab the QR code. We'll be back with the Dave Cam in 2 minutes.
Big dig.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at Ocean Beach, New Jersey. Just the, whatever those deserty looking plants are there, Celeste. I was not going to guess that was Jersey. But
no kidding. I know. Those weeds. Who knew they had weeds in Jersey on the beach?
Hey, by the way, we always say, yeah, really. We always say we're the friendliest chat on the internet.
We do.
Our chat box is so cool on YouTube.
You all are amazing.
But we know a lot of people watch on TV on what used to be called My 45, which is now Fox 10 Extra. But Ethan is on.
KUTP.
Yep. Ethan is on. And Celeste is a stickler for call letters.
KUTP.
Anyway, so Ethan is saying, anybody else on here from Gilbert?
Oh.
So if we have any other Gilbertonians, did we decide on Gilbertonians or Gilbertites?
Gilbert. I like the Tonians. Gilbertites makes it sound like they're an insect. So let's go with Gilbertonians.
Right. You Gilbert folks, join the convo and say hi to Ethan.
Also, a big shout out to Rebecca Saunter, because we've been talking grocery stores with the big announcement with Trader Joe's across the street from the other Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
She's like, we could talk grocery stores all day, LOL. And I thought, you know what, that is so classic.
That's so great.
And by the way, Tank is watching from the Tempe Library, and we just love that he's very resourceful.
Yeah.
Because he's inside indoors on a hot Arizona summer day, using the AC there and their Wi-Fi.
Got to do what you got to do to catch FTT.
Live.
Because we're the only streaming show in America that offers Dave on the Dave Cam. Some of these others that have their own Dave Cams, but it's not really Dave.
And they don't know him as Big Dave.
All right, Dave, what happened to your lighting, buddy? Once again, I feel like we're looking at you with a disco with the lights turned off. What's happening?
I hope you like the lighting. We always try to make it special for you.
Brighten that thing up. What are people saying, Dave?
So, excellent comments on this poll. Joyce Stinson from Litchfield Park says, I wouldn't be shocked if they tried, but I think they'll be overruled by a higher court, because indeed that does go too far, and the Constitution is clear on that. Tom from Gold Canyon says it's time to do something, because all Iran does is say they will stop, but turn around and do what they want in hopes they can get away with it, and they have. Then we've got Black Lodge Skateboards, who says there's no reason why the United States should go to war with Iran. Israel made their bed, now they've got to lie in it. You can't attack someone and cry when they strike back. And finally, Trev5556 says those wishing a judge does that are objectively ignorant about basic constitutional law. Unbelievable that anyone could think that a judge could involve himself in such matters of executive authority. The president is granted all executive authority by the Constitution and is the commander-in-chief of the military. So great, really thoughtful comments. Keep the comments coming. Keep the conversation going, guys.
All right. Thank you, Big Dave.
Thank you, Big Dave.
And don't forget, you can still vote in that poll question, grabbing that QR code. But you can also, let me pull up the YouTube poll. We haven't looked at that yet. Look at that. You always know when we're above like 250 votes that people are really connecting with that question. And almost 500 now say, yep, I think it will happen, and I hope it works, that a judge will shut it down.
Yes.
20% say, of course, now he can't even be commander-in-chief. 46% say no. Overruling a president on military matters goes so far. So whichever way you're voting, we appreciate. We also appreciate Isabella.
We do, Isabella. Hello. Hi. By the way, Ethan, you do have a couple of friends. Charles David is out in Gilbert.
Nice.
Or near Gilbert and Chandler.
Yep.
So we do have a couple of places. RLS Vids. He's in Gilbert.
Oh, he is.
So the three of you can get together, you East Valley brothers.
Good. That's great.
That's
we
good.
got to find out what kind of videos RLS Vids does, right? I'm assuming he's in the video business or something.
I'm sure, Vids.
Okay, so you guys, there's a study out that says if you work more than 40 hours a week, even if you love your job, you're doing okay. But if you hit a certain mark, it overworks your brain and it turns to mush.
What's that mark?
52 hours a week.
Oh.
Now, that's only an extra, hour and a half per day?
Yeah.
I've had plenty of days where I'm here an extra hour.
I totally
hour
agree
and a
with
half.
you. Or we work on the weekends. You
Yes,
know, if something
right.
comes up, we've emceed a lot of events, but that's not really work. It's kind of fun. But
Don't tell the boss that. They did find that once you hit that mark, it can actually cause significant changes in parts of your brain associated with two things. And maybe, I don't know if you guys can relate to this at all, but once you hit that overwork mark of about 50 hours,
Right.
your decision making starts to falter and your emotional regulation.
So you'll lose your noodles a little
Correct.
more.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening with me?
I don't know. I mean, have you ever felt a little edgier when you've worked a really long week? Anybody?
what do you think,
Anybody?
Isabella?
I feel just so exhausted
More of
and
an
like my
exhaust
brain
type
isn't
thing.
working.
Yeah.
I
Like,
lose my
can't hold a
noodles. Yeah, I'll
conversation.
go home and lose
Celeste
my-
with the noodle talk.
Noodles, are you hungry?
Okay, but here's the question I wanted to ask you guys. What was your first job? What was your first job, Isabella?
I was a receptionist at a hair salon.
Ooh,
Really?
That's a nice
Okay.
gig.
In
Yeah.
Renton?
Uh-huh.
Okay, Renton, Washington. Celeste, how about you?
City of Tempe, I worked at a swimming pool.
Oh, wow.
I was the register. I took the $2 from
Oh,
the
you were. You weren't the lifeguard.
No.
Okay.
I was not a fancy lifeguard. I worked at
Okay.
the front and I said, "Hi, welcome, $2."
Nice. Yeah.
And I took the money at the pool.
My first job, you guys, and Celeste knows this, Isabella, you don't yet, but my first job was picking apples. So growing up in my hometown, Wenatchee, you're surrounded by apple orchards, and my parents wanted to make sure I had a good understanding of the value of hard work and the value of $1. And they set it up so that every Saturday we went out into the orchards and started picking apples, and it was an all-day thing. We were out there from like 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
What kind of apples were they?
Mostly Goldens.
And did you ever partake just to make sure they were ripe? Lips are sealed.
I don't know if I can answer that one, Celeste.
Well,
Eating
because-
of all the profits.
Well, you have to know, right? And
Yeah.
these days, I feel like there's so much food that's like, what is it, cosmic? There's a kind of apple that was like generated in the lab.
Sure.
You know, but
Right.
back when
Honey Crisp.
Honey Crisp.
that's
Those
my
are
favorite.
good.
Yeah, but those were the real deal, Ron. Those
well,
apples.
it definitely made me resolve to not want to do that for the rest of my life, picking apples. So it was my sister and me and my mom and my dad. And anyway, very soon after that, I decided I was going to walk into the radio station in my hometown and look for a job. So I pretty quickly got into broadcasting instead of apple picking.
There
Okay,
you go.
we have people talking about their first jobs now.
Like?
In the chat.
Okay.
Troy S said he was a golf cart boy. And welcome to Melissa, by the way. She's brand new to the chat. Melissa Nichols says she's first job was a bagger cashier at Jewel Osco.
Okay.
And so
I
yeah,
remember
share
all
with
those.
us.
I remember all those Jewel Oscos. There was an
Yeah.
Osco kind of in your neck of the woods over there at 7th Ave in Osborne.
Oh, there was.
a
You're
long
right.
time ago.
And there was a Bash's there too. It was one of the original
Yes.
Bash's. And then Saya says her first one was at Duncan.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Donuts?
So Brandy, by the way, Brandy the bookworm, is saying that the orchard. She's saying what orchard, and it was, if you're familiar with Wenatchee, we're right in the middle of the city. Is the gigantic Columbia River.
Yeah.
The other side is East Wenatchee, and we went over to an orchard in East Wenatchee and just picked and picked.
I bet they made the best apple pie.
I bet you're right about that,
You know,
Celeste.
when I worked in Boise, that was my first TV job.
Yeah.
This lady at my church had an apple orchard, and she would
Aw.
bring bags and bags of green apples to church on Sunday.
Oh, is that
and
right?
it was like she would just give them to
That's
everybody at
amazing.
church. And so I remember taking a couple bags home with me, and that's where I learned how to cook in my first job because
Yeah.
I had 45 minutes from decent tortillas and salsa.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I called my Nana, and she gave me her salsa recipe and
Yeah.
told me how to make tortillas. And I
Aw.
made my first homemade apple pie there because I was like, this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. Isabella, how long do you switch to your second job? And was that in the broadcasting game or what?
Well, after the hair
Uh-huh.
receptionist
Yeah.
job, I worked at Starbucks over
Good
COVID.
for you. Two
Oh,
great
Yeah.
gigs.
okay.
Yeah,
That was
but-
only over COVID.
during COVID.
Okay.
And then my first job after college
Yes.
was down in Tucson.
Okay, as an
Yes.
employee there, what was your favorite drink or snack?
You know,
At
I
Starbucks?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
really liked the cold brew.
Yeah, that's what
They
I
brewed
have
it
in
really
here right
well.
now.
I think I might go try this new. It's like a banana cream cold foam protein shake.
Where's this?
At Starbucks?
They're going to roll it out. It's being tested in certain Starbucks now.
Oh, wow.
But, people love to go to the gym
Uh-huh.
and then go over and get a protein drink.
Right.
So Starbucks is going to get into that game.
That's a great
How about that?
idea.
Yeah. All right, you guys, let's go to the big news in the mascot world, which is the class of 2025 has just been announced. And here they are. Fred Bird from the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Blitz, that guy from the Seattle Seahawks. Sebastian is it Ibis or Ibis?
I don't know. Good question.
At the University of Miami.
Uh-huh.
S.J. Sharkey from San Jose. And then Toro, that's who we're looking at there. Toro from the Houston Texans. There is only one Arizona representative in the Mascot Hall of Fame.
And
what
it is?
would you think it is?
I'm going to go with Sparky.
It's not Sparky.
Wilbur.
Now, this is, by the way, Anita joins as well. This is.
Hi, Anita. Yeah, something will
Oh,
stick.
Anita, who did you bring? Jolene.
Aw. Hi,
Nice.
Jolene.
Good.
Jolene.
Yeah, sure. But so here's the gist of the whole thing. Sparky's not in. I can't believe that.
Oh,
No,
what
not in
about-
the Mascot Hall of Fame. It's the Phoenix Suns Gorilla, which is great.
I was gonna, because back in the day it
Right.
was the Suns and ASU football.
Yep,
There was
forever.
no Cardinals, no
Right?
D-backs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But we have supposedly the sexiest mascot in America,
Oh yes.
Baxter. So can we
Yes.
start a push to get Baxter into the Mascot Hall of
I
Fame?
think you're absolutely right. That's
Yeah.
a great idea. How do we make that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, just real quick, Anita, because we got to say goodbye, but we did promote it. These are, you know how we talk about how stupid criminals are?
Yeah.
These guys are arsonists. And they were trying to set a building on fire, but they drenched themselves accidentally.
Good for them.
And look what happens. They have to jump out of the arson
You
car.
know what? You get what you deserve.
It
It's
sounds
called
like
karma.
Getaway car.
It sounds like success.
Oh my gosh. The guy hops in and his buddies are like, this is not the way we rehearsed it. The whole thing is just
I don't think they
hilarious.
did rehearse
They're not
it.
very smart to begin
Jolene
with.
really wants to talk about it, you guys. She
Yeah.
really wants to talk about
Aw.
it. Jolene. So we're going to talk about SB 1658. If you guys...
Scooch down, Anita. I can barely see.
SB?
No, scooch down.
Oh, they
more.
want to see. We want to see your
There you
face.
go.
I can't
with
scooch
the
down any more
doggy.
than that. It's going to hurt my spine. This is a bill that animal activists have really been hoping will get to the governor's desk. If you
Okay.
remember the Chandler 55 case, rescuing
right.
55
Yeah.
dogs,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
found dead in the freezer. And so what they want to do is have some tougher laws on the books
Yes.
when
That's
it comes
next-
to rescuing.
That's next on YouTube.
Yep.
Okay. See you there.
today. And we have Coco Garcia with Hand Over Rover, along with Jolene and Jerry.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to have you sit really close to the mic because sometimes our viewers at home, hi everyone at home, can't hear us very, very well. So this is a really big day. We actually were chatting yesterday, anticipating and waiting SB 1658. Tell us about that.
So this bill is going to be, it better defines what animal cruelty is in Arizona. Right now, our law enforcement has a very difficult time when we call them out to a scene where there's hoarding, where there's neglect, where there's animals that need to be treated because the laws have been so gray. And so this bill will clearly define what that looks like. So it'll make it easier for them to make that call and say, let's get those animals out.
And not even the gray area, but I think what was on the books prior was almost, not even sufficient enough when it even came to providing adequate necessities for a dog, as basic a bowl of water, not just a puddle of water on the ground. So can you better explain what changes are in this new version?
So there's, unfortunately, with this law, in order to get it this far, there had to be some negotiating with those. So the main three things were food, water, and shelter. That's what we originally were really trying to push. And the food and water portion.
Is that what the current laws are now then? What are the current laws as far as animal cruelty and what is required, what isn't required?
So right now, legally, the current laws say the animal has to have food, water, shelter. But that is not clearly defined. So if I'm out on a case or somebody calls me and says, hey, this animal's in 115-degree heat on a chain, that video that you saw of the dog on the chain.
We're going to show that right now.
Okay, so that dog is Billy. You see that little piece of wood? That's his shelter. That was all he had from the elements.
And that is considered
that's
by
adequate.
whether it's state law, the state, law enforcement, whoever, that is considered his shelter. That's okay.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the water we see with him.
And the water, he was standing in a foot of water because they flooded, and he couldn't escape it, and there was nothing wrong with that because he had shelter. And that's just how it was. That water bucket did not have water in it. It was empty. But because it was there, an owner can say, oh, he just drank all the water. And that's how it goes. And the food source.
So in that sense, that means you can't go into rescue. The police can't go into rescue. No one other than that owner can surrender that dog and say, I need help or I can't adequately care for them. If the owner says this is how it is, then that's just how it is.
That's how it is.
Okay.
And for that dog in particular, I negotiated him. I just didn't talk to the guy until I got a yes. Because he lived on a chain, a horrible life, and I just played nice and he gave me the dog. So that is how we've had to do a ton of rescue, and not a lot of people are willing to do that, and there's only so many you can take in. It's a very difficult way to navigate all of this. So having this law in place, although the food and water portion didn't really make it into this bill, the part that did was the suffering, was the neglect. And so that portion, now that it says, what is the word? God, I keep forgetting this one.
Well, while you're thinking about that, let's backtrack because a lot of people, we don't have video of
talk
this.
about how this all started.
But let's backtrack to this Chandler 55 case.
Right. Okay.
And so this started, you were involved in that, and I know it's kind of tough to see, guys, but we have Jerry down there, and Jerry is in a little doggy wheelchair.
Oh, they're kissing. How cute.
They're boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh,
Jerry was actually a survivor. He's a rescue from the Chandler 55 case. Tell us about that case and how you were involved with that.
Yep. So there was a woman out here in Chandler that portrayed herself as a rescue, and she was a special needs rescue. She had been on the Dodo. She had been on some big platforms. She had a following. A lot of people knew of her. We did not know because a lot of us skipped some of our own rules, which is how I ended up sending a dog to her. I was out of town and had a special needs dog that needed a spot to go to. She waved her hand. Somebody else endorsed her, said, yep, work with her. She's the one. I didn't do a home check. I didn't do a home check.
You never went in?
Never. And you don't do that in rescue. You don't ever do that. Even rookies don't do that. And I didn't do that. And so I sent a dog to her. And then when I got back to Arizona, I played phone tag and I could not get to that dog. And when I realized something's not right, somebody else had been navigating that, and we found out she had over 63 disabled dogs and 900 square foot house They were all disabled. Nobody had wheelchairs. She took them all away. Nobody was eating. They were locked in kennels. No medical treatment. It was a fraud. It was a scam. And because she was taking dogs from out of state, she was sending home check videos of just properties that were available to rent.
So we're actually getting some comments from our viewers. Lil Philosophy says, oh yeah, that was a crazy case. Sherry Nevada Pup, we have a lot of animal lovers on here, says April Addison trial coming soon.
Yep.
We are going to put that abuser away. So people are paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, there were also animals that were found deceased on her property as well.
So when we first alerted authorities, the condition of these dogs was so horrific. Humane Society was inside the house. They could see, police could see, you could smell from the sidewalk. But there was no definition in the law that said what she was doing was illegal. So they could not seize the animals. And for 3 weeks, they fought and searched for a reason to get a warrant. When they finally did, they were able to seize all the animals. 55 came out alive. 5 had to be euthanized immediately because their injuries were so severe, and 5 were found dead in the freezer.
But Jerry, right? That's how we met Jerry.
Jerry's hanging in there,
and
isn't he?
Jerry pulled through.
Just walk us through Jerry's journey. You know, how has he been doing since, you met him? And...
Jerry hasn't missed a beat. This guy is, he's an all-star. Oh, gosh. I'm sorry.
I think we're going to need a new chair, Dave. Sorry.
A little chew toy.
He was pretty beat up from the injuries, from everything, but he went to her paralyzed. He went to her he had been shot in the spine, and she was going to rehab. He never got that. So we've been doing that, and he's come so far outside of his wheelchair. If we just had him out here, we do PT every single day, and he can start to take steps.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so he's getting there.
So this Senate bill then, at what point and who decides we need to put this together, we need to present it to the lawmakers, and hopefully the governor?
Yeah, so Arizona Humane spearheaded all this, and they're the reason that we've been able to push as hard as we've been able to do with this bill. And once it got, we needed this. I'm new to this part. I didn't know how to go about this. I just learned that city council helps tremendously. So we got involved last year, and we've just been chipping away, and combined with social media and using our platforms to rally the troops and have people email and call and let our lawmakers know we need this. It worked.
Wow.
And we seem to talk about these cases here in Arizona quite often. Since obviously starting Hand Over Rover, how many dogs have you rescued, and is this continuing to be a daily battle, which I'm sure it is. It's just why you do what you do.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number. I'd have to go back and look at everything just off the top of my head. It's a tremendous amount, and because that we do cases like Jerry's going to be with us 2 years this October.
And probably for the rest of his life.
Well, he will be adoptable.
Oh, he will. Wonderful.
But that was the goal, was I wasn't going to let him go before that 2-year mark because I wanted inflammation to go down and I wanted to see how far we could get him, because if he could walk, the goal is always to take the difficult cases, and once they're easy, then we adopt them out. And the ones that most people aren't going to, fight for.
Yeah.
And so if we get him, come this October, he'll be available. And if he gets adopted, great. If he doesn't, great. Either way. So we move a little bit slower because we don't do a lot of puppies. We do a lot of special needs, a lot of behavior. And it's never ending. I'm hoping with this bill in place, as more people start to feel the pressure of, stepping up and taking care of their own animals, that maybe we'll start to see a little bit of alleviation in the care of animals.
We won't see the cases that we have been seeing. Lil Philosophy says Jerry is chilling, and Sherry Nevada Pup says, love Jerry. Coco has him walking some now with rehab. So these are people who actually follow you, which is incredible.
Awesome.
You do have a huge outreach. What is the next step then for this bill? We've got the House, we've got the Senate. It went from one to the other. And what's next now?
So the next step is it goes to the governor's desk, and she's got to sign it. So that's.
Do we have a timeline?
There's a 10-day window that she has to be able to sign that. Yeah.
Have you had any discussions with her personally, or
no.
do you know where she might be sitting on it?
I don't. We've made it this far, so I'm not leaning towards anything but green lights.
And hopefulness, right? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Hand Over Rover, you can't do this yourself.
Correct.
Obviously, you rely on the
Yep.
community,
Yep.
volunteers, people who can donate. Frankie D says, Lil Guy wants to play. That's Jolene, Frankie D. And yes, she does like to play. I think she destroyed our chair. Sorry. Oh. How can people help you? How can they help you make a difference? How can they make a difference?
You know, social media has been how we've grown this entire organization. Fully. We are fully funded through donations that come through on social media, people that just participate, that watch our stories, that see the animals we work with. Following along on social media and sharing these situations is the most impactful thing anybody can do. And you really don't have to lift a finger. You know, it's a couple clicks. But that is how we've grown our audience, and that's how we've been able to get people to rally and help. I mean, same thing with Chandler. When that unfolded, we couldn't get any movement, and so we went public, and it made national news because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have a wish list. I've been on your website. What are the items that you need most to help care for these dogs, especially because you're taking in ones that are a little bit more challenging, whether it be behavioral or physically?
So I think for wish list items, we go through blankets and towels like you would not believe. That is the number one. Yep, priority on the list. And then in addition to that, all the dogs that are fostered with us, we have a ranch property, and there's 28 dogs that live inside.
Awesome.
5-bedroom house. You know, they live as they're ours until they get adopted. But when they're in their kennels, you know, we give them a snack, a treat, a Kong, a bully stick, something like that. So they're not sitting in kennels while they're waiting to get work. So that's probably number 2 on the list. Yeah.
Coco, we've got about a minute.
Okay.
We know Jerry's story, and we know he'll be up for adoption sooner, hopefully, than later. What is Jolene's story, and how do people maybe make her theirs?
Yeah. Little Jolene, she was found in a dumpster. Arizona Humane had her, and we saw in her portal that she has hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain, and that requires some kind of medical navigating, and we wanted to make sure she got what she needed, so we took her in with us.
Okay.
She's shown no signs of any of this affecting her, so she's going to be adoptable in the next month or so, and you can find adoption applications on handoverrover.org.
Awesome.
Okay,
And what's your
amazing.
Instagram?
Handoverrover.
Great. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Coco.
And thanks for all the hard work that you do. She's a sweetheart. We'll be back in just a few. We've got a really fun guest coming up in the next. I'll follow Coco, and I think it's an important story. It's really neat. What she
Oh, what did Linda say?
She just said thank you.
Oh, okay.
She said thank you, Coco. Great info.
Nice.
And then Sherry Nevada Pup said, Coco should know who I am. Been following her since the start of the April Addison House of Horror. So
Nice.
we walked
Okay.
by, Ty, Ronnie, and I were doing like a little late morning walk. I think it was like late winter, early spring, and there were a whole bunch of people out there with signs and just kind of sending a message.
Yeah, we've
to,
covered it.
Yeah,
Intensely.
So on to some lighter stuff, some more interesting stuff, folks. There is a new report out there about millionaires.
Oh,
okay.
How would you like to become one?
I will.
I'd love to be one.
I will
Wait a
take
second.
it, please. Right. So this new report says 379,000 people become new millionaires, and that's more than 1,000 people a day who added 7 zeros to their net worth. The United States accounted for about 40% of millionaires worldwide. Here's my question.
What?
Okay. Does a millionaire to you, Angela, we will put Coco's up. Sorry. They're asking how to follow Coco. We'll put her info up. Dave will do that.
Oh, yep. And Instagram, she said hand over Rover.
Thank you. Do you need $1 million hard cash in your bank account to say you're a millionaire? Or are you looking at, for example, your house is worth $1 million, your 401k, you've got $250?
Well, I don't, and that's right. When you look at this,
Yeah.
their net worth, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, with all your assets, right? Your house, your vehicles,
You got a
things you
car.
own. No, I want $1 million in my bank account.
I'm gonna agree with
Especially
you on that.
now, the housing market. I mean, things are all up and down. Obviously, our home values have rose tremendously. So most likely, if you sell now, you're in a good spot. You're in a pretty good come up, but
But
no.
then where do you buy, which is a whole other
and then
topic.
that sets
whole
you
other
back,
topic,
right? And then you don't have enough to get something new anyway. But
do you?
I need it in my bank account.
Do you
How
think
do you,
it's
is-
easier?
you do?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I feel okay about things like if I had to sell the house, but you don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
You want to have that $1 million.
Grateful to have the house, but
Yeah. But you want to keep the house.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it's easier in this day and age? And Frankie D is chiming in and says all your assets make you a millionaire. So Frankie D is a little bit more optimistic or positive than we are. But do you think it's easier in this day and age to become a millionaire than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Or do you think it's more difficult?
I don't know. I didn't live 10, 20 years ago.
Okay.
But I would think it's probably easier nowadays, right? Because I guess if you look, jobs pay more, but in
The cost of
relation to the
living
cost of
is more,
living,
yeah.
It
It's
doesn't
just
even
an
level
interesting
out.
topic. It's just an interesting
What do you
topic.
think?
I don't know. I think that it's harder because I talked to some of the millennials, the younger generations. We have a floor director who's recently married, and it's like the rent is so expensive that we can't save up for a house. And I feel like it's more difficult to get a house, and housing market, it went up, and then the rates are up, and so it's tough.
Yeah.
It's
And when
tough
I
out
look
there.
and when I read this, something I thought about is, okay, all these, people becoming millionaires. What I wish we would have learned more in school or at a younger age, more about the practical ways to invest.
Correct. I agree with you 100%.
Things that we could have really used to help us gain financial stability and growth as we get older.
Okay, couple of comments. Ethan D. Good morning, Ethan. I think Ethan is new to our stream. Says it's definitely more difficult now to be a millionaire because of inflation. Charles David, good morning, Charles, says more difficult, especially if you are trying to invent something new. So those are both interesting cases.
Oh, what are you trying to
I
invent?
know. Let us know what's going on there.
I want to know.
My dad worked for Motorola. They made the big phones. They were a big company.
Oh, yeah.
He had a retirement. So that traditional, when you're done working, you retire, and there's not a 401k. Is that what you guys call it? A retirement? Do you know what I'm talking
it would be our 401k. A pension?
A pension. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. And so he never, they encouraged me to save. They encouraged me to work, but they were never like, look, this is what it's going to take to retire, because I think they always thought I would get a pension. And then lo and behold, I feel like most private sectors don't offer government jobs still offer pensions.
Right.
But
City,
private
government.
sectors like what we work in don't offer a pension. You have the 401k.
I know. And you'll hear some people here are grandfathered in, which is great, but they're like, oh, my pension. I'm like, what is that?
And
What's a
I like the idea of a pension because you're getting that paycheck from that pension. Whereas the 401k, you have to go in. I don't know anything about stocks. So
I am so bad with
Right?
all of that. Yeah, it's just like a foreign language to me. That's why I'm like, I wish somebody would have taught us more.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, now it's upon ourselves, right, to
Yeah.
go out and educate ourselves. But it would have been nice to
or
learn
pay
a little
someone,
bit.
and then I feel like, well, then I'm not using my money wisely if I'm paying someone to tell me how to invest my money.
Yeah. I don't know how it works.
Well,
what do we do?
I don't know.
What
If
do we do,
anyone out
Anita?
there, Ethan D says, I wish
Play
they
the
had
lottery?
Yeah, an
What are our
investment class
odds?
in my high school. I agree.
Investment
completely.
classes,
I
yeah.
agree.
What were you doing in your financial class, like in high school?
We didn't have one.
You didn't? You know what? In high school, I didn't take any either.
No.
Middle school.
I
It
don't
was like that
remember.
7th, 8th grade year.
No.
We would take like home ec. We'd learn
Mm.
how to sew, how to bake, how to cook. And then I remember learning how to balance a checkbook.
Yes.
That is
that's what I
the
was gonna say.
last thing that I can remember
Which
within
don't
my
exist, technically.
education, right? Balancing a checkbook.
Yeah.
We don't even
No.
who
I just
really
look
does
at my
that
account
anymore.
and
My
like,
mom still does.
Does she?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I haven't
Yeah.
written a check. We have a routing number just in case, like you get some type of refund and
Yeah.
you need it. But
Well, everything's on an app now.
I know.
So who knew we'd be there?
Yeah. Okay, this is a topic Des and I are very, very passionate about.
Should we go there?
Extremely passionate.
We're gonna make
about.
some people mad, I think.
I cannot wait to hear from everyone. So
Let's do it.
Shoes in the house or no shoes in the
You
house?
know where I'm at with this.
No
Absolutely
shoes
no.
in the house.
No,
None.
never, ever.
Mm-mm.
What about if I got to run in and go grab the keys?
No,
real
take them
quick?
off.
Well, come on, Anita. I just have to run to the
Take 'em
restroom
off.
real quick.
Take them off.
Can I just step inside the door with the shoes?
Take them off. 400 on average. This is a professor at the University of Arizona who did this study. Just guess how many.
We need to bring him in.
That is a
I could talk about
fantastic
this
idea.
all day.
Fantastic
I want to
idea.
know how this research was conducted.
Well, you just have to look, really. Guess how many units of bacteria on a single shoe sole?
I don't even want to know. 421,000
Yeah.
units
Uh-huh.
of bacteria
And
on a
that-
single shoe sole. So that's one. You got 2 feet.
Think
You got
about
2
the thing-
shoes, 2
think about
soles.
the things you
Double
step
that.
in. What are you stepping in when you're outside?
Okay, here's oh my gosh, this is always a debate in our house. My husband gets so embarrassed when I say,
Same.
you better tell them to take their shoes off
Same.
before they come in. And he's like, oh my gosh, really? They're not going to be here long. No, take their shoes off. Tell them to take their shoes off. And I always say, this is the example I give.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right? You leave for work for the day, you put your shoes on, you walk outside, you get in the car, you come to work. we're out in the field, we're in and out. I had to use the nastiest restroom once on the west side of town, and it clearly had something on the floor that I did not intentionally step in. Now I leave. I go about my day. I walk in the building outside. Now I'm going to walk in my house.
No.
After I stepped in whatever I stepped in
Comments.
that restroom.
And then
I'm
we're
going to bring it in the house.
We're going to
No.
get back to the restroom. Charles David says, I prefer no shoes. You use house shoes or slippers. Amen.
Yes.
Frankie
My
D
grandma was all about the slippers.
We're Polish, so that's you
Mhm.
had to wear slippers. Everyone had their own
Yeah.
slippers. Frankie D, I have tile. Sorry, Frankie. I'm still not wearing shoes with my tile.
I have tile too.
Lil Philosophy says the bacteria spreads. Sherry Nevada Pop. I tried no shoes in the house, but nobody listens. What do you do about the dogs? Excellent question.
My husband, you sound like my husband. He brought in the
Excellent
same argument.
question.
And I mean, if I could, I would put shoes on the dog and then take them off when the dog comes in the house too. But my rule with the dog is not allowed on the couch, in the beds. Right, but I've thought about
It's
that.
tough.
Right, your dog goes out and goes
You
to the restroom and walks through your house.
So Johnny
But I say
started-
let's not add to it.
Yeah, Johnny started wiping Shorty's paws. We have a rug right there by the door. Wipes
Yeah.
his paws. I do let him in the bed, but he's almost 18. He doesn't lay around outside anymore. Like he barely goes outside. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
feel
Shorty, and he's got some health.
yeah.
issues
So I
and-
feel like it's It's not that bad, but I think.
So what do you?
about
Okay,
two.
so question for
Okay.
you, my fellow no shoes in the house partner here. If you're having a party with a large number of guests, we're let's say, what's a lot?
Thanksgiving.
15 to 20, 25 people.
Okay.
What do you do then? Are you doing no shoes, or
So-
are you going to allow shoes for the party and clean up afterwards?
This was a question I brought to you. Thanksgiving, I was having people over, and I said, Des, how do I handle it? Because I have all these people coming in, and it gives me anxiety to think that they're going to wear shoes in the house. And you said just politely ask or send out a note. You know what happened?
What?
They all came to the door and took their shoes off. And my little nephew says, we don't wear shoes in Chocha Anita's house. They know I don't wear shoes in the house.
Yeah, and I always send out like a little star at the bottom of an invite or a text, and I just before the event, right? Because it makes it less awkward.
Yeah.
I can just put it out there. Hey, just a reminder, we're a no shoes household.
Yeah.
And that way, if you want to bring house slippers or
Great
I
socks.
don't like walking around people's house barefoot. I don't know. It's just a thing that I have. So if you had that rule, I would know, okay, I'm going to bring a nice fresh pair of socks. So I don't like walking around barefoot. I have to take my shoes off. That's fine. And that way I'm like, well, it's out there. It's
Yeah.
out there. I text them that, just
It's
a little
fine.
reminder, no shoes.
Yeah. I just feel like, you wear your shoes around outside, and someone mentioned it's in their car, and you'll put the soles down and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hi.
Yeah.
We've only got a
Hey.
minute.
I'm
We only
sorry.
that's
How
okay.
are you?
We'll just have you come back.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
give us a sneak peek. Maybe
Wait,
you can-
where can we find you at?
On
On
you can
Instagram.
find me at Poohbrezzy, POOHBREZZY,
Uh-huh.
on all socials.
Okay.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. you
You're an
name it.
artist.
Yes.
You have really amazing. Did you wear your slippers?
No, I didn't.
He wears really cool slippers. Do you wear shoes in the house?
Would you let him wear his slippers
No,
in the
I don't
house?
actually. I just
You don't
wear
wear
slippers.
shoes in the house?
Slippers.
Why don't you wear your shoes in the house?
Okay, I got like 50 pairs of slippers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, but not for germ reasons.
Oh, no.
Oh,
He just likes
okay.
slippers.
He just likes
I love
slippers.
slippers.
We are
We
gonna
thought you were on our side
reschedule
with the
you.
germs.
Yeah,
We're going to
I'm
reschedule
sorry,
you
yeah.
because you have some really cool stuff to show off. Hopefully people will go follow you. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend.